Welcome to the Burgundy Gold Knuckleheads podcast. As always, you know who's riding shotgun with me. It's my main man, Reggie. And lo and behold, we got a special guest today. What's going on, Reg?
What's going on, man? We do. I'm not riding just shotgun by myself today. We got a special guest, as Ken just mentioned. If you're watching us live on YouTube there, you can see we have a special guest, Miss Donna Hopkins. Donna, welcome to the show.
Hey, I like that. The knucklehead.
Well, we want to let our listeners know who Miss Donna Hopkins is. So, Donna, I'm going to read a little bit on your profile here. Donna is a reporter with Pro Football Plus. She's the co-host and reporter of a weekly sports show covering our beloved Washington Commanders. Donna is also an accomplished author and the founder and CEO of Hopkins Breast Cancer, Inc. Donna holds a degree in both radio and television communication and the Regents of Arts. She's a standout athlete in her own right. She earned a college scholarship in both basketball and track. And last but not least, you will also recognize Donna's voice during Commander's press conference in her special tagline, "Hey, Coach." Welcome, Donna.
I love that. I was like, "Hey, Coach."
I always know when Donna's asking a question because she goes, "Hey, Coach." I was like, "That's
no,
Donna."
It's so funny because people be saying, "Hey, why don't y'all call him, by his name?" I said, because I'm from old school. When you play sports and whatever, you still, no matter what the age is, you call people coach.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's
very
it.
Good.
And so when I did a little bit of looking on your bio there, and I realized that you was an athlete, so now it all makes sense because you're a former athlete yourself. So basketball, huh?
Yeah, little hoops, a little track and field and everything. So, I try to, when I'm, in the trenches with the players and whatever, being an athlete, you ask questions a little different when you play a sport than other people that may have not them, but you kind of like get into the depth of what goes on.
Yeah. Little different perspective for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. And a little more appreciation.
Yes, and Reggie and I have been following Donna on Twitter. If you're looking at this on YouTube, it's scrolling across the bottom. But if you're not, I just want to give a quick plug early. Her Twitter handle is Donna Hopkins _. There's an underscore at the end, and you can follow her and keep track of it. But we first met Donna face to face at the same time that we met Lou Holder, and this was at the game, right? This was at the game where against Chicago with the Hail Mary. We met her and Lou, and we had already known Candy, but we met them and got to share some time with them before that crazy game. Real quick, before we get into some other stuff, your memories, I mean, it's been, a full season plus at this point, your memories of that game and that moment, besides meeting us, so obviously.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? It was like fantastic as far as just that game in general. Commanders looked like they were going to lose that one, and then they pulled it out at the end. And I think that kind of like set everything stage-wise moving forward. I still think that Cincinnati game is the turning point also in that game. But that one was one that, this past week with the Commanders getting the news that the team will be going back to RFK if everything is worked out. They were talking about that game, the excitement, because if you know the old RFK Stadium, when you were there, it was rocking the stands. They were bouncing up and down, and you would love, that's football in the trenches when they were at RFK. And that particular game was the biggest game, I think, where you really saw the fans really come back and embrace the team.
Yeah, we as you said, we were at the game. We lost our voices screaming about the results of that game. Because to your point, we were losing, and it took obviously the last play of the game for that to happen. And I just remember looking down the field, and you see the whole entire sideline just rush the field, and the exact same thing was happening in the stands. People high-fiving, hugging complete strangers, and it was just pandemonium, right? And so all the way out to the concourse, going back to the
in the press box, in the press conference room. I mean, I was there. I had went downstairs the last probably 3 minutes of the game, And, you know, when they were getting, I was like, and I don't know if everybody had seen it. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I mean, I was jumping up and you know, you're supposed to be biased or whatever, but anybody that wasn't jumping up cheering at that game had to have their head examined. But it was so unbelievable just the way that play materialized with Jaden running for his life. And I mean, he had to go from one end of the field to the other end of the field. And then, you know, it bounces where it just ends up landing in his hand. But that's the play that even doing, you know, the honors and everything that the Commanders got recognition for. So that's why I said that is going to be a play that goes down in history for a long time, because people were talking about it today. If you had to pick big moments, 3 big moments, a lot of people were saying that they would be picking like the sale of the Commanders finally, where we got it in the hands of somebody that knows what they're doing. And then the announcement of the team going back to RFK, and then that catch. But it's so many other memories that I can pull out, but those are fresh. And the first 2 definitely are at the top of the list.
Absolutely.
And we're going to move on about a couple of things, but to piggyback on the celebration, you know, we took the Metro that day, and it was a party all the way to the Metro. Cars honking, people dancing and singing, and music going in the cars. And I mean, it was all the way to the Metro, right? It didn't stop. It stayed in the stadium for 10 or 15 minutes afterwards. You know, people just didn't leave. They just stood there and celebrated, then in the concourse, and then all the way to the Metro. It was a magical moment, magical period of time even afterwards.
Well, you can imagine the locker room and that joy in there to be able to talk to the players right after that. So it was fantastic. One that would go down in the books.
Yeah. It's certainly one of those things. And I'll just say one last thing to wrap this up on that topic. But, you know, I tell people, when you watch it as a sports fan, you watch games, even with the rooting interest, and the team does a Hail Mary, it's exciting. And I said, but I never would have thought that being there took it to another level. Because if I had been watching it at home on the TV, I would have been ecstatic, right? Just over the top. But being there, for some reason, it just took it to a whole nother level. And just being there is a memory that Ken and I will always have. We got videos and pictures and all those things, but just when people talk about it, I can just remember being in that moment. And it was different being there than it was on television. I can actually
wish that I could have ran on the field. I mean, when you looked at the coaches hugging each other, knocking each other down, it was crazy. It was so much fun. I mean, it's almost like you caught that ball also with that celebration.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you alluded to number 2 on your list. There was the team making the big news yesterday with the, I don't know what that was, the big press conference, I guess is what it's being called, with the mayor and Josh Harris and the commissioner of the league talking about the team going back to DC. And if you're looking at it on the screen there, you can see kind of some early renderings of what the potential stadium could look like. And so, Donna, just want to get your thoughts, I guess, with the team returning to DC, feelings, thoughts, opinions about this whole announcement.
Yeah, that's pretty fantastic to learn that the team, they've been working on this deal for a long time. It was between, you know, Maryland, DC, Virginia, and everybody was wondering, was DC going to get this opportunity to take it back? And to hear Josh Harris at that press conference say that growing up, you know, it's nothing like, and even Darryl Green, I talked to Darryl Green on yesterday, and even he said that it's nothing like football in DC, the nation's capital, on a Monday night, those Monday night games. And then, you know, the blimp is over the monuments and all of that, and it's Roman, and it's just a backdrop that you love to see when they're scanning that during the course of the game. But to have the team go back 180 some wasted acres that's just been sitting there for 30 some, or what, close to 2 decades, 3 decades, and it wasn't being utilized. And it's not just going to be the stadium that they're looking at putting back there, a roof stadium at that, because it's going to be used for so many other things besides the football, entertainment and all those that brings jobs back. So when you look at what the $2.7 billion that the Commanders are going to put up for just the stadium, but it's other money like 30 millions and other dollars. I'm not going to get into all that, but that 2.7 billion is just for the stadium. But they're going to build an infrastructure around there for fan experience, tailgating, and all that. It's a football site. That's what people have to look at. It's going to bring revenues back to that area, jobs that people have lost right now back to that area, a sports complex where people don't have to go outside of the district for their kids to have track and field gymnastics. That's what the mayor was talking about. And then the green land and other things around that 180 acres. So I was asking them, well, will people be displaced? Because normally when a stadium goes up that size, you think about the Dallas Stadium. And even though they said people are not going to be displaced, ask the people in Dallas. Some of them were displaced to go up. And then they were talking about affordable homes and so forth. But for middle class and all of that. But we know that affordable homes doesn't look like the same thing that people who live in that neighborhood consider affordable homes. But it's going to be a good thing because you just showed that picture of the stadium. And they, when we were talking to Josh Harris last year about the stadium throughout the season, and we were asking, what are you, patterning that after? And he was looking at 3 or 4 stadiums, but SoFi was at the top of the list. And you look at SoFi Stadium, it's similar to that picture that you just showed. And SoFi is one of the better stadiums. He was looking at the Raiders, and Minnesota has a nice new stadium that has not been there. And I just hope that they'll have like Atlanta and Detroit, where the press boxes are open, where you feel like you have that energy and you can hear it and you're not behind a glass, unlike most stadiums. But a lot of things have to still happen. The council has to be able to approve it. They have to have 7 votes and so forth. But I love it coming back to DC, because in talking to Daryl Green, I told Daryl, you started your career at RFK Stadium. He said, yeah. He said, I was nervous. I was throwing up my first game and so forth. He said, it was everything that you wanted it to be. And I can remember covering games when I first got started in my career. And the last game where the stadium, they were building the new one out in Landover, and it was pillows. It was flying all over the place. The energy was great. And I can remember, like I said, watching those bleachers go up and down. It was something to behold. And guess what? Winning happened at RFK Stadium, because that's where they had those 3 Super Bowls and championships to go along with that. So not only are you bringing the Commanders back home and everything works out, you're bringing winning back there, because the Commanders already started off that. And Roger Goodell, talked about Josh Harris and what he has already done. In the first year, you take your team to the championship game, 1 game from the Super Bowl, with a rookie quarterback. That is just not heard of.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. And I always forget that Roger Goodell, he has to be unbiased, but he grew up a Washington fan. And I always forget that until he get in these press conferences to specifically talk about our team. And he talks about, during the time he grew up. And so and I know a lot of people hate on Roger, but Roger has to become my other version of KD. A lot of people give Kevin Durant a hard time, but I said, KD's a Skins fan, man. So he can do no wrong in my eyes.
All right with you. And the great thing is, the question was, will Super Bowl come to Washington with this new stadium with the roof and all that? He didn't really say yes, guarantee, but he just said possibility. But you can believe that stadium opens in 2030, the groundbreaking in, I think, 2026. So many other pieces have to take place, but the stadium, the fall of 2030, they supposed to open the stadium. And wouldn't it be something that they open that stadium, the Commanders have a great year, and they end up winning a Super Bowl there? And let's just put to bed, they asked about the name. Name is not going to change just because they're going back to RFK.
Thank you.
He made that plain. It's going to be Commanders. So can we move on past that and look at the fact that put a winning product on the team versus worrying about the name? The name is never coming back. You can kind of like stamp, seal, and put that to bed for good.
Thank you so much for doing that. I don't know why people cannot move on from that. Listen, I understand. In fact, I'm wearing my hat simply because I knew we were going to talk about the old RFK days and the team going back to DC. So in honor of that, I wore my hat. But I know the name's not coming back. But people cannot move on from this topic. I don't get it. And some people just say they're never going to be a fan again. Then that's okay. That's okay. Move on. But at the end of the day, either get on with it or get out the way, because the name's not coming back. We're going to be the Commanders here going forward. And hopefully with all of the new regime, the new quarterback, the new ownership, it's nothing but good days ahead here. But
yeah, fans stick through it. Real fans, I'm not downing on anybody, but real fans stick through the good and the bad, winning and losing and all that, mad about ownership and all that. You stay the course and everything. If you're a real fan, you may fuss, you can fuss and do whatever you want and be mad about the situation. But at the end of the day, you stay committed as a fan. So the name, do you want a name change versus a winning team? That's all I want to know. I mean, I'd rather go with a winning team. Right. And the Commanders kind of fit really because this is a military team. A military area. So when you talk about all the branches here in the nation's capital and all that, Commanders kind of like works now. And it's already, I mean, it rolls off my tongue easy now, so I don't have a problem.
Well, I'll say, Donna, as you were laying everything out about the stadium and reflecting on Darryl Green and everything with that, I just want to know, do you personally know any of the city council? Because you laying it out like that, is positive Washington Commanders propaganda. And I'm going to say, go have lunch, go have dinner, go have coffee with these councilmen, because that's a good sell, right? I too grew up in DC and talking about the We Want Dallas game and it bouncing and all. Quick tidbit: we won in the playoffs, and we're going to play Dallas the next game. I was getting up early because you couldn't buy tickets online. You had to go down to RFK. I had my car packed with a lawn chair and blankets because it was cold that next morning, and my alarm didn't go off, and I overslept. And
how dare you?
It was like
you're still kind of like just smacking yourself all around for that one, right?
Look, that was 30, 40 years ago, and it's still it's still agony. It's still, I was supposed to buy tickets, I don't care, in the nosebleed and be at that game beating the Cowboys, and I overslept and did not end up making it. So, but anyway, thank you for laying it out, because I couldn't have laid it out any better. For those that don't go by that area, it is to your point, it is a big open, the stadium is there, but everything around it is just open, flat, concrete, dirt. There's nothing there. So
it's been sitting there for forever since they played there, and nothing has been decided about that. And for them to give this back to DC to be able to put that stadium on there, and you got some people that still having a problem with that. But this is the thing that people got to remember, and this, I heard this today, is you had all this time until now to figure out council-wise to do something with those 180 acres, and you did nothing. It's just been sitting there. So an owner of a football team is willing to put up $2.7 billion that does not have to come out of the city's financial pocket. So the taxpayers and whatever, and not only that, anytime they put up a stadium, whatever, it's going to be some taxes for people who live there. But it also is going to be jobs that is going to be created because of that also. So opportunities, and we're living at a time right now that people have lost their jobs and everything. And this is going to bring a lot of jobs and opportunities back to that area, to the city, and put life back into that area. Can I just say life back into that area? Come on.
I agree.
Get on the bus and let's start riding.
Yeah, I agree, Donna, because again, it's going to be a few years of people having jobs, just building it. And as it's opportunities, it's one of those things where when a large business comes in, people start buying land around it because they know there's an opportunity to build a business there, whether it's housing, whether it's bars and restaurants, retail. Everybody's going to be moving in there to get on the Washington Commanders bandwagon and try to make money off of all the positive things that Washington is doing. Again, this isn't an area where there's just enough room for the Commanders. There's room for growth and other people to come in and invest, make money, and turn that area into something positive. Like you said, it's been sitting there for 30 plus years with no development.
Yeah, they talked about Nets Park. If you live in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, go down to Nets Park. They even showed a picture in the slides to us that what that area looked like before the Nets went down there, and they build up that whole area. So when you go down there by the wharf and all that, you like, what is this? I can remember going down there when I first moved to the area, and it was like needed to be developed. And now that it has, and they're talking about that, I just want to say this, with the notes yesterday, 5,000 to 6,000 new homes, and also 2,000 permanent full-time jobs, part-time jobs, 14,000 construction jobs as this is getting built. That puts a lot of people money back in pockets. And then they're supposed to have 6 hotels, I think 80 some, I'm not for sure the number of restaurants and so forth. So it's going to allow people to really grow in that community and bring it back to life. So like I said, come on, people, let's get on the bus and ride this one, because this is a no-brainer for the district that basically almost lost the Wizards, to Virginia, and that didn't work out. That deal didn't work out. And as Darrell Green told me, I hope this work out. And I asked Josh Harris also yesterday about what did he want the fans to know, because they've been starving for this to happen for a long time. And he said, hey, they have been too, because I think that what makes it great with Josh Harris is that he understands wanting to go to games there. He grew up in the area, so he has a passion. And he did say, fans, for those people who said, man, you get a new stadium, ticket prices are going to be sky high, and the average person is not going to be able to afford that. Well, he said that he always, even now, looks up to have people be able to afford to come to games and bring their families, because you going to a game by yourself, it's going to be expensive. To bring your family, you just got to put up your mortgage and your house and everything else. So he said that it will be affordable for people to be able to come to the games, at that new stadium. So that's what I like, is that he's taking everything into consideration. And this organization, just like the Commanders coaching staff and how they work with that team, the front office and leadership is A+, and they have this in the right hand to get the job done. So it's the DC Council. We need 7 votes for that to happen. So you all need to kind of stop being so political and do the right thing.
Yeah. As the mayor said, this is a win-win-win for everybody involved. And so they just need the votes on it and stuff. But outside the name change with this news, the big topic on social media was going to be the pricing. And I do think it's a valid question in whether or not the average fan would be priced out of the new stadium, right? The licensing agreements that these new stadiums come with, and the thousands of dollars that fans have to pay in addition to ticket prices, because again, these owners are trying to recoup their money. At the end of the day, they're businessmen, right? And for the Commanders, for example, I think they raised ticket prices, consecutive years. And because again, they're pouring money into Northwest Stadium right now, millions of dollars, and kudos to Josh and them guys for doing that. But again, they're pouring millions of dollars into a venue that they're going to leave. And so again, ticket prices goes up, but there's no seat licensing fees right now. And that's going to be part of the new stadium. And so it remains to be seen. I think people are concerned about it, and I think rightfully so. And so hopefully Josh does take that into consideration. He said it publicly. I think I heard him say that as well. And but easily we can get to it. I'm not trying to be doom and gloom here, but then all of a sudden you realize there was a lot more money they had to put into it, and they're trying to recoup money, and it justifies the reason for maybe it being a little more expensive than they had expected it to be.
Yeah, it
But I
would
do
be. Let me
believe it's
say this, said that when he went to first game at RFK, tickets was $12. I said that we'll never see that again. $12.
you
Look,
you can
if we see a ticket $20, we'll be shocked right there. But I mean, you're going to expect it to be, there, but it could be ticket prices where, you have, lower ones that people can't afford to go because they do have to recoup their money. But, the investment and all that. But I would say just hold on and let's just see how this plays out. And I think that Josh Harris is true to his word in trying to keep those ticket prices where it's affordable for families to be able to bring their kids because, you just don't want the rich and famous to be able to just, enjoy
right.
this, but you want everybody to have the opportunity. And I believe in keeping everybody involved because you have Commanders fans from the rich to maybe not so rich that want to have an opportunity to come to games and bring their families.
And especially when they return to DC.
Exactly.
Absolutely,
Could
people
you
will want to
imagine that
do that.
first
And so,
game? Oh my gosh.
yeah, I can't imagine what the first home game going to be like in the new stadium. And one last tidbit on the stadium before we move to the draft, I was going to say is just put a note in Josh's ear when you talk to him that don't do the floor suites and things and like what Jerry has. That is you get people. You want the fans in that area, not corporate suites where people are down there and they're not even watching the game. They're just at the game. They're not watching the game. You see it at
Are
Cowboy
you
State
talking
because we
about
live
in Dallas, the lower suites on the ground and everything where they can't see anyway. So you can't see in that
exactly.
area anyway. So put them down there because
Yeah.
guess what? Players are standing up where you can't see the game anyway. So if you're going to have them in those suites where people that come to games just for the social things, put them down there low where, because the experience is for them to be able to see the players come into the locker room and all of that. So I'd rather for them to be because I was there and you couldn't see anything. So I'd rather them be down there than up high.
That's fair. I
But
just figured I want
that's not going to be Washington Stadium. That's not even how it's constructed.
good. 'Cause I want fans in that area. We can yell and scream at the Cowboys.
One quick question, and then we'll get to the draft. I know you talked about the stadium, and this isn't directly about the stadium, because we haven't had you on before. We've been here for a while with the changes. Josh Harris and company from an ownership group, from the outside looking in, they hired the right GM. The GM and them hired the right coach. They've gone through 2 drafts, some free agencies that we thought, people like Wagner and whatever coming in here, got the stadium deal. There's been some events that have gone on. Is there, I mean, we can nitpick, but they do everything right. Right? Is there anything that you have seen that they don't do right at this point?
No, because I think that when they came in, they took a year to kind of like look at everything. They didn't even get rid of a lot of people. They kept people in place because they were trying to understand what needed to stay and what needed to go. And they looked at the operation of how it was being done. So they did their homework when they came in the first year because, that came in at the last minute as far as him being owner. So I think looking at everything and not jumping the gun so quick, that they were able to really assess this team. And that's the reason why you see this ship moving in the right direction versus thinking like it was for all those years under the old ownership. So when you look at just getting the front office right, this is the first time that the front office has been right for a long time where you have solid leadership in there. You have a solid leadership from ownership. And the thing that people don't understand about Josh Harris that really needs to be talked about is that this is not his first rodeo. He has other teams, professional teams from hockey, basketball, I think baseball, and basketball, and now football. So they may be different in certain perspective, but not so much. The organizations are ran. And when you have the right people in your leadership group from the owners, Magic Johnson, you bring him in as an owner, and some of the other ones you bring in the Golden State person to help, look for, the GM coach and all that, and then you bring in the right coach, that could have been a disaster because everybody was looking for the young coach the young coordinator becoming the head coach, and you thinking that was the hot ticket, and nobody thought about Dan Quinn. It's funny, Tony McGee that I do the show with, he said that Dan Quinn would be the right coach. And I was like, oh yeah, Tony, sure. He said, no, I really know him because, I knew him in Atlanta and so forth. And I'm thinking like, oh yeah, right. But now, you know what? I have to say he was the right coach, because when you talk to Coach Quinn and look at his style and doing things and knowing how to navigate around there, and then the all-star coaching staff that they brought in here, they brought in winners. I mean, coaches, they wanted to jumpstart this quickly and not have it 2 or 3 years on down the line. So you bring in an Anthony Lynn that had been a head coach before, Queensbury, up there in Arizona. He was there with the disaster quarterback that had a head case right there. And then you talk about Coach Norton, one of his players that got drafted by Commanders, it was under his leadership. So, that guy is going to come in and be able to probably move quickly because Coach Ken Norton knows this guy. And then you talk about Coach Rod, the tight end coach, and I could go on with the list of coaches, but and I didn't even say Joe Witt as far as the defensive coordinator and Simmons and all those guys. But when you look at that coaching staff and they stayed in place, and that is the key thing, is this team doesn't have to start all over. But if some of the coaches had have left, Coach Quinn had put in place other people to step right in that they didn't have to go out looking. So that's what I'm talking about. When you do things right, this is the result as far as what happened to the last year. And it's Adam Peters and everybody told me when I asked him about how do they measure this year, they said, you can't even look at next year. This is starting over. They told me at the combines, starting all over again from the beginning. And that's what you have to do because everybody has changed going into this season and everybody's going to be gunning for you. And not only that, the Commanders know that in order to get to the championship game, the Super Bowl, or even have a successful season, pieces had to be put in place to be able to move this team forward. And they did that in free agency and in the draft. I believe that they did an A+ job on both of those fronts.
You're stealing some of my questions, Don.
I sounded a little excited because let me tell you, last year was so much fun. I've been covering this team for a long time. I've been there with Super Bowl wins through the drought where, it was a train wreck. And now it seems like the pages are turning where this team is moving in the right direction. The train, as they say, going in the right direction. And I'm so excited about what happened last year. I mean, nobody foresaw that last year, that they would be in the championship game, and what they did to Detroit in that game and just took them apart. And then they moved on, and, Philadelphia is Philadelphia, and that's the team that they got to measure in the division because Philadelphia had a fantastic draft too, and they just made themselves better. But I'm excited about this team again, about, just where they're going. So, last year, I'm still giddy on that because we're all looking like, whoa, nobody expected that. I had to contain myself up there at that Detroit game. Adam Peters was over from me. And I was like looking at him like, yeah. And, I was like, I wanted to go give him a fist bump. But look, I would have fell down in between the bleachers because we had some distance in between us. But it was fantastic because I think my mouth wouldn't close because I kept saying, whoa, whoa, did you see that? So it was fun.
Well, it's good that you're giving us all this because one of the questions I was going to ask you is how different is it for you guys in the media to be covered? Because you're covering a team that is just all about football. And then we had a successful season. And it's not about questions where you're talking about all the off the field stuff. It's truly what I would assume would be the envy of other reporters of other teams that are having this type of NFL success with good ownership, good players, good, just from top to bottom. And we hear you guys talk about it a little bit, doing some of your press conferences. We see from afar, where I've seen, I think twice, where the organization is giving someone in the media a jersey because the guys were retiring and things of that nature, that it seems like more of a partnership than adversaries. then this is just part of the job. You guys are here to do your job. I'll answer some questions and everybody goes home. It's like when you guys are all in the building, it's like you're all part of the organization at that time. And that's what it looks like from afar. What's your take on that?
Yeah, when I've been covering this team, like I said, for a long time, and this is the first time in a long time I've seen when they talk about the brotherhood, and people sometimes talk about brotherhood, and it doesn't mean anything really. It's just that players that play on a team together and they're brothers. But in talking to the players all last year, and ones that had been here under other regimes and so forth, they said this is the first time that they truly felt like this was a brotherhood where you really liked your team members and you would go to bat for them. So I saw all of that. I mean, that's what I heard from every player, the ones that had just got there, and you could see it. You could see that players were, and if you've ever played sports and whatever, when it's a true locker room where team members are really there for each other. And Frankie Louvu told me this as at the locker room clean out day. He said it was no prima donnas on this team. And that's what you saw. When you have a true brotherhood, nobody thinks that they are any better than the other one. Jayden never thought about that coming in and the sex he had. I mean, he really gave accolades to all of the other players and all that. Frankie Louvu, the Bobby Wagners. It does help to have the Bobby Wagners and all of those leaders on the team. And then it goes back to the coaching too. You got leadership there, but they physically really liked each other, and you saw it on the field as far as them going to bat for each other. You saw their play be better, because sometimes when people are not getting the starting role anymore, they were a starter and now they're not, and then their attitude comes into play and all that, and the poison just spills. The poison apple kind of like spreads to everybody else. Well, you didn't have any poison apples in there, no matter whether people were starters anymore. And I truly felt like I was part of the brotherhood, sisterhood, them, having me part of the organization as being a part of it. Like you said, I felt like that too, from the way everybody treated you, from the coaches to the GM and everything. This is the first time I told people that I really had a lot of fun covering this team, doing this job. And that even goes back beyond being there for Super Bowls and everything. It's about, looking at how people treat each other and respect each other, no matter what your entity is in covering the team or being a part of the team. And I saw that with the draft, with the PR department, great PR department, the whole 9 yards and everything. It was fun, but this team is special. I mean, that's the reason why the people that they bought in have to be able to fit in with this team, whether it is from free agency. When you got the free agents that the Commanders picked up, they really stay heavy on that defensive side of the ball, which I'm okay with that, because they needed to add some things there. Still question mark of the edge rusher. But as far as some of the other pieces they put in place as far as offensive line, because I tell people, you got to get the defensive line and the offensive line in the trenches. That's where it starts. And then you build around that, because you ask Philadelphia, you ask some of the other teams that made it far or was successful in the season, solid offensive and defensive line. And the Philadelphia Eagles is your Achilles heel right now. And that NFC East has started to matriculate again, to be excited with Russell Wilson up there in New York. Don't know how that's going to play out, because I can't believe he just played one season with Pittsburgh. But Philadelphia is the team that the Commanders measure themselves as far as that mean defensive line. I mean, you look how they destroyed Kansas City in the Super Bowl. And now you look at how they even, pushed the Commanders around. So they had to shore up that offensive line, and being able to get, Connolly from Oregon. And then, remember, Brandon Coleman, they drafted him last year. He should be better in his second year. And then Laramie Tunsil, did they give up too much? Absolutely not. When you, and they made, let me tell you, they made the most use of those 5 picks in addressing everybody across the board, because everybody, coaching staff, should be a little happy, because somebody got their offensive line, their running back, wide receiver, and on the other end, they got their linebacker and then their cornerback. And let me just say this, Trey, for them to get Amos, for them to get him where they got him, he wasn't even supposed to be there at that point. That was high on their ticket. So I like the way the Commanders are moving with what they've done with this team through free agency and bettering themselves. But as Adam Peters and all of that group told me, Lance, Newmark, they said that they're always looking at how to make this team. So just because they've got these pieces, you can believe that they're still looking at people that may be out there available through free agency that teams haven't picked up right now.
Yeah. It's funny because how you mentioned that, because from a free agency perspective, the two names, from a free agency perspective, there wasn't the big names. Like going into, we thought there was going to be a lot of big, oh man, we're going to go get this, A+ home run player or whatever. And they didn't go and do it. But then after that, all of a sudden we did, made a trade for Deebo Samuel, right? Made a trade for Tunzel. And as we were going into the draft, on a previous podcast, I was like, man, I think we should go. My strategy is go all in on offense, be the most dominating offense, and say, we're still going to address the defense, but this year you're going to have to try and stop us. Right off the bat, they go in and get the tackle out of Oregon, and then a couple plays later, they get the speedster, Jalen Lane. It's going to be Jaden to Jalen, hopefully on some long bombs or whatever. But when you start looking at all the pieces that have been put in place, I mean, we had a top offense last year, and there's going to be 3 or 4 upgrades on top of a great offense last year. This is going to keep some defensive coordinators in the NFL awake.
Well, I'm going to fuss at you a little bit because I wanted to go defense, because I felt that they had to get better on the defense, because if you can keep your, as far as the offensive teams off the field and so forth, and the Commanders couldn't stop the run last year. They had problems with that. So I thought that they needed to get better up front. So that I knew they needed an edge rusher to be, because when you look at the way Philadelphia was able to get the quarterback, Carter was taking on 2 people and they couldn't even handle him. So the Commanders, they had a problem. They had problems getting to the quarterback last year. So they, to me, needed to shore up the defensive line and the offensive line too. So either way it went, line play, I was okay with that. I think that the Commanders, when you look at the offensive side of the ball, you had to get better up front and had to have a little more depth. And what Connolly does for you, Josh Connolly, is that he can play guard and tackle. So it's good to get players drafted that can play multiple positions, because Sam Cosby is not going to be ready until late in the season. So that's one guy that's not going to be able to help you until late. So you had to be able to draft another offensive lineman. So you got a little more depth there on the offensive line. And if you can shore up the offensive line a little bit better, our running game, the Commanders' running game last year struggled at different points. And you had Brian Robinson out for a stretch. Then you had Eckler out for a long stretch because of the concussion. And we know that if once you have a concussion, you're going to have multiple. It's going to be easy for you to have multiple concussions and so forth. And so, I mean, Jeremy McNichols, they signed him back, and Chris Rodriguez. And now, they signed another running back through the draft in Merritt. So, and this is a fast guy and so forth. But I think that the running game is going to be better, and they want to utilize the running game a lot more this year, because I think it's going to make that offense, as you said, a little more powerful. But the offensive line being intact, and you can get them strong, it's going to help that running game, and it's also going to protect your quarterback. But the reason why I was so high on the defensive line is because I think with the cornerback position, with Trey Amos, you get him, and with Lattimore, Jonathan Jones, that they did through free agency, and then Mike Sandersteele. The great thing about these cornerbacks that they got right now, they can play multiple positions. We know Mikey Sandersteele, he came in playing the inside, but they decided to gamble and play him on the outside, and it was a success. And my colleagues and all of us go backwards and forwards talking about they're going to put him back in the middle. And I was like, no, he's solid on the outside. And if they had to put him back in there, he could, but they know he can play multiple positions, even though his true position was inside, but he's learned to play the outside. And then with Marshawn Lattimore, the fact that you're going to have him healthy coming in this year, because they got him when he was nicked up, so we really didn't get to see him. So imagine seeing a healthy Lattimore and then Jonathan Jones that can play. He plays the right. So I think you have some guys in the secondary that you can say, well, we got some guys that can cover now. So, but look, you can only be as good in the secondary if those guys up front can get to the quarterback. And that to me needed to be shored up. And Kinslaw is going to be a guy I think is going to be right up there. That's going to be able to help this team right there. Gozman, Wise, Martin, and all those guys that they signed. And Will Harris taking Jeremy Chinn's position, which Jeremy Chinn got away. I was totally shocked about that. I was like, I thought he was coming back, but he got away, and the Commanders were shocked about that. But I think Will Harris being there, that safety with Quan Martin, and then, some of the other guys they got there, I think they're going to be solid there. So, again, pieces are still being put in place, but I really like how they really addressed a lot of the defense in the free agency, and then more so the offense through the draft. And it's still, it's still that diamond in the rough, the rookie camp is next week, but it's that diamond in the rough that that surfaces, and maybe the Commanders got that person.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this. I think, Kim mentioned going all offense and you mentioned the defense. I think the answer is they needed to shore both, right, at the end of the day, because, you look at us from a defensive side, we had trouble outside of Dante Fowler getting the double-digit sacks. We had trouble against the run. Well, they had to shore that up, and you could tell from a free agency standpoint, it was all about stopping the run, because even if you get to the quarterback, you still have to be able to stop the run. And based on the signings they hit in free agency, it looks like they said the number one priority was stopping the run. Lance Newmark made mention of it the other day that they're still considering the second wave of free agency. So that may be where the veteran pass rusher comes in. And so you have the rotation on the front for the run stopping. Then maybe you can get some of that sacks, whether it's, Jordan McGee getting some situation pass rushes. You got Frankie Louvu doing some situation pass rushing. Maybe they can kind of supplement the loss of Dante Fowler. Contrary to that, on the offensive side of the ball, we know what Philadelphia was able to do to us and Kansas City. Then you look at what the Giants did in the draft, right? I mean, their defensive front is going to be amazing. And then Dallas, of all people, already had Michael Parsons. Then they went out and got, I don't want to say his name because I'll probably screw it up, but they went out and got this kid who was projected in a lot of mock drafts to come to Washington, but he goes to Dallas. So Dallas could potentially have two impact edge rushers. And so you have to shore up our line, because when our line started getting injuries toward the end of the season, it showed up in pressures on Jayden, and it showed up in the disappearance of our run game. So with only 5 picks in the draft and not being able to get the big guy in free agency, I think they did the best they could trying to address both. But we have to remind ourselves, though, I think with having only the 5 picks in the draft, we have to remind ourselves that Laramie Tunsil, Deebo Samuels, and Marshawn Lattimore would essentially is part of our draft class and everything. Yeah. But I'm excited about what they've done.
Draft picks. They had all these draft picks, and Washington had to give up some of theirs. But again, I think what you said, Lance, in the second round of free agency is going to look to see, because there's some guys out there, they wanted money. And the thing that Washington came into this free agency really with a good salary cap. So they set themselves up really perfect to be able to get some of the players. And the thing about the Commanders, people not looking at, they're only signing players to 1-year contracts, 2 at best, because they're like, we're going to see what you're going to do. And if you're going to fit into this team, and we're not giving mortgaging this team for nobody. And if you work out, then we'll sign you again to a 1-year deal and so forth. So I kind of like how they're maneuvering this and setting themselves up so that they can have salary cap, because guess what? If they're going to have to sign Jayden Daniels before that comes up his final year, that year before, and so forth, to shore him up, to make sure that you got him on that roster for a long time. So you're going to have major money, because probably by the time Jayden has to sign again, he's going to be the top quarterback money-wise signing in the NFL. So the Commanders still have to look on down the line to say, hey, we still got to make sure that we don't be like the New Orleans Saints, that are a train wreck as far as their salary cap and all of that. They can't even get out of their own way. But I think that NFC East is going to be, Dallas is looking at Dak. Can he come back and be the quarterback that they need him to be? Because I don't think that he's quite materialized into that quarterback they projected him to be when they drafted him. But Dallas made themselves strong still on that defensive line. And, in the defense, they were pretty good. They just needed some tweaks on the offense. They didn't have a running game, quarterback question mark. The Giants, we know what the problem they had. They were just a train wreck as far as their quarterback situation. They was letting go of Daniel Jones, that they had paid all that money. And they said, well, goodbye, see you later. So they wasn't even upset about keeping him on. They had demoted him to third string and then off the team. So, their quarterback situation is a question mark up there, but they've got a good, solid defense still, no matter what. They still getting over themselves and letting Saquon Barkley go to the Philadelphia Eagles. They need to be kicked all up and down New York for that dumb move. And then, with Philadelphia, they're the team to beat, because they've got everything from the wide receivers, offensive line, your quarterback, your running back, playmakers on defense. They are the real deal with all the pieces. And I thought that they were going to be a disaster, because they lose their offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and they struggle at the beginning of the year, last year and this year. And then all of a sudden the pages turned and they got better when they needed to, but they're pretty solid. But it's a good NFC East again. We can talk about the rivalry, of those teams, and Washington is right at the top of the leaderboard.
Absolutely. Well, let me ask you this then. I think you've kind of alluded to it. I want to make sure, but who would you say probably was your favorite draft pick out of the 5 that Washington chose in this past weekend?
Yeah, I think that I look at people that can immediately probably come in and play. And so I think Josh Connolly can do that. I mean, he said that his combines was up and down, but this coaching staff has a way of bringing out the most in every player quickly, competition and so forth. So I do like that pick. And I do like Trey Amos. I think that this is a guy that, like I said, was projected to go earlier than the Commanders picked him at 61. You like everything about him: speed, 4.43, 40-yard dash, the 50 tackles, 3 interceptions, led the team with 13 pass breakups. And I think that he fits right into that group. So if I had to pick the 5 people, and I like them all, because Lane is going to end up taking Jamison Crowder's position as the punt returner. He's multi-dual roles as far as receivers. That slot, he's going to be used probably in the slot. So I do like him. But if I had to pick, and then, as far as the linebacker, running back, I think those guys is going to be with Coach Ken Norton, knowing, Kane and everything. But I think that if I had to pick my top 2, it would have to be Josh Connolly and Trey Amos. Only because I think that they're going to be immediately impactful players. And not that the other ones, because they may surprise me, but I think that these 2 really are kind of like set up to be able to come in there. Because look at Josh Connolly, 311 pounds and good feet work. And, little things that Adam Peters said that he was already, because I asked him about him, and he said he's already, as far as ahead of the game, he's got that quiet confidence. And these players, every player that they drafted, you could just tell that they were their character and what the Commanders is looking for, and not having the problems off the field with these players, their faith and just, how they spoke. You could tell that they're already professional. And Connolly, he's already ahead of the game as far as his preparation, pro style preparation already. And I asked him about that, and he said, hey, it started when he was in high school. Leading in there is, how do you prepare yourself for just knowing the game even better? And Adam Peters talked about that. So that's the reason why I picked those two players, because I think that they're going to be immediately able to be starters on this team. And as Coach Quinn said, it's no real starters. Everybody's competition, but we have a few that we know it ain't no competition there.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I couldn't agree. I couldn't disagree more. Couldn't agree more, because again, I think with Connolly, he's going to fill a need on the offensive line, and we know that although we have depth at the corner position, there's space for someone to jump up and take over a starting spot, right? And so I think that's where Trey Amos has the potential to be, and he fits that mold of that big corner that Dan Quinn tends to like as well, right? But let me ask you this, and Ken, you can go next. But what do you think? What would be your early projection of the old line now that we got Tunsil, you got Brandon Coleman's going to get shifted, and then you draft Connolly? Because in the short term, Cosme won't be there. So how do you project that line to look maybe early on?
Yeah, I think that they're going to be better than they were last year, adding, because I think that Brandon Coleman is going to be a better player. Coaches talked about these second-year players. They're going to be better because they've already been coached up and then coached up for the second year. So it's not going to be thinking so much, but it's going to be just reaction and plan, where you don't have that rookie pressure where you're still learning and you're still thinking too much. So I think that the offensive line is going to be better because you gave yourself a little more depth there. So I it's early for me because I don't like to get, ahead of myself, because I'm that person I got to see it. I got to see it at practices and whatever, to see how they blend, see how they move, and then hear from the coaches. So I think that on paper and everything, they made themselves better by drafting another offensive lineman that can play both guard and tackle. I think Brandon Coleman is going to be better, and Tunsil definitely is going to help that team finally getting somebody on that side that really, that's going to cause havoc and everything. But I still want to kind of see how they all blend together when it's all said and done, because we can say on paper everybody looks good, but when they come out there, because at the beginning of last year training camp, I was like, gosh, this team looked rough. I mean, they were struggling from one end to the other, and then it came together at the right time, because that's what training camp, these OTAs are all about. As Coach Quinn said, we go to the classroom first, we come to the field, and then we look at it, and then we come back to the classroom to make sure we're getting it right. So their classroom work, and you already know, you put it together in the classroom of what you're supposed to do, and then you come out in the field and put it on the field, and then you see what needs to be tweaked and what's not working. And the great thing about this team and this coaching staff is that they're already assessing themselves from last year to say what worked or what did not work, and what we were doing on offense and what we were doing on defense. But I think the one coach that is important, and all of them are great to be back, but Kingsbury, for Jayden Daniels to be back to help him in his development, is so key. And I think Kingsbury wanted to come back, even though he wants a head coaching job. But I think that he saw the value in having a quarterback. It's not many people that can coach or have a quarterback in your lifetime that you say, man, he's special. I want to coach him. And I think that's what Kingsbury did in saying that, even if he goes this year, he wanted to be here for Jayden Daniels in his second year.
That might have been our best re-signing. And I know he wasn't technically re-signed, but that may be our best returning player/coach of the entire offseason, if Cliff Kingsbury.
Yeah, and the quarterback coach, because it's not going to stifle Jayden's development either, because it's just going to go. Jayden is not going to be stifled anyway, because he's in a different class of his own as far as his mentality for his work ethics. And you can't teach work ethics. You either got it or you don't. But his hunger for the game and wanting to be better, and being being there before his leadership, being there before anybody else as a rookie quarterback. Who does that? Well, maybe Josh Connolly may be right there with him, because he's another one of those guys that gets to the office first too. So I won't be surprised that he's right there sharing that time frame with Jayden Daniels.
Nice.
Yeah. I don't disagree. I think Connolly and Amos are going to have the most impact, right off the jump. But like your input or ideas, I mentioned earlier about Jalen Lane with the kickoff return rules. I think he can step into the kickoff and punt return. And for those that don't know, the NFL is, there's not a running start on the kickoff, but they are encouraging kickoff returns. And if he can hit the seams and find the holes, if he does, man, it's going to be a foot race, and not too many people are going to catch him.
Well, that's a good thing about drafting him, Jalen Lane, is that he has speed, 5'10", 4.34 40. He led that team in reception at Virginia Tech. Like I said, he'll be using the slot, speed deep from the. It's just the speed and everything, and to be able to get away. And I think Jamison Crowder was good, and they were trying multiple people there last year. But to get a sure guy that can do that, the punt returns and everything, where you have a nose for it, you can see the lanes, and then you have the speed to get away. That's what the Commanders were looking for in that. Now, we know that punt returning, you can't be nervous back there catching the ball and, where everybody is coming at you. You got to be sure hands back there, because college and the pros is totally different. When you see those guys coming down there after you, it's a whole different monster. And so I think that with him, that's where they're going to utilize him. And I think that he'll be a good fit if everything works out as far as catching and all of that, because definitely, like I say, he has multi-roles as far as wide receiver, and that he's going to help them in the wide receiver. But we didn't even talk about that, because when you look at the wide receiver group, the Commanders really have solid, and everybody plays the way that we are projecting to them. Deebo Samuels getting that, having that year that he had, in his earlier part of his career. If we can have that Deebo Samuels, I think it's going to help that. Terry had that outstanding year last year. Hopefully that can happen again this year. And Noah Brown, they bring him back. He's going to be healthy, because Noah was good. He was that big receiver that they needed in the red zone, and just to be able to get open. And then you got Lane as far as the speed. You got, I was trying to think of something. Yeah. Gallup. So they got some competition there. And then Luke McCaffrey and all of them. So when you look at their wide receiving group, that's going to be a good competition there. And the guy that Gallup was retired, and then he decided to come out because, relationship again with Coach Quinn and all of them. So I'm interested to see how he pans out with this team, and can he be that wide receiver that he was projected to be, back. I won't even mention the name.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
So I like the receiving group, because they got talent there. They got speed that they hadn't had before. So it's going to be what they talk about competition. It's going to be good competition there from some of those other players that I look. And Luke McCaffrey, I think he did a good job as far as kickoff and punt return when he got in too. So, and he's got good speed, but not lane speed. But still, you need two guys back there, because you need some depth. So it'll be interesting how that all plays out.
I think the wide receiver room and the DB room are probably going to be the rooms with the most competition. Right.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah. I think that's where the biggest competition is going to be. So,
well, we'll get a chance to do that, because the rookies will be in next week, and then the veterans will be in after that. Early June, all of them will be there together. So it'll be interesting to see how, early on before training camp, late in July, when they get together as one unit and everything. So again, this team is not finished yet as far as how it's going to look, the roster come opening day, because I believe that they're going to get some more free agencies, the players that wanted the money that they didn't sign, or they may set out. I don't know, but it is yet to be seen, because I think that this front office, as far as Adam Peters and Lance, they keep things close to the vest. You can't
and
even
I like it.
nothing. And I told somebody, I love that, because people talk too much. They tell too much, just in the world in general. I mean, they tell how they can destroy us and all of those things. But this group, I mean, we knew probably that they were going to get Jayden last year, but this year they kept everything. They keep things tight to the vest, that you can't even open the vest a little bit to find out a pinch of information. So I kind of love that about them.
Well, before we let you out of here, we can't let you get out without asking you one more about the invitation of Gabe Taylor. Sean Taylor's baby brother got an open invitation to the rookie. Is it a rookie mini camp? Is that what they call it?
Rookie mini camp.
Yeah. So he went undrafted and was invited. Got an open invitation to the rookie mini camp that should be coming up next week. And there's been a lot on social media, and I just made a post about it. It's like, I love the story. I'm happy for him, but I hope that fans will allow him to create his own journey, his own story. I like the fact that it with his brother's former team, but let Gabe Taylor become Gabe Taylor and not trying to live in the shadows of Sean Taylor. But I love what they did there.
I hope Gabe does not put the pressure on himself, because he's coming to the Washington Commanders, a team that Sean Taylor. I was there covering Sean Taylor when he was there. A fantastic player. Sean was not going to talk to the media a lot, but I love that about him, because he showed who he was, as far as what you see was what you're going to get. And I can appreciate him as a player in person. And I hope that, like you said, that they allow him to create his own path in the NFL. I love that the Washington Commanders gave him an opportunity to hopefully keep his dream going. And it's up to him right now. So I hope he does not put too much pressure on himself. I'm looking forward to talking to him next week, but I hope that he does not put the pressure thinking that he has to live up to Sean Taylor and be Sean Taylor, but he allows himself to be the person who he is, the player who he is. And I'm sure Sean would have wanted him to be just that. And I just think that the Commanders will allow him to be that. I just, I really appreciate, again, talking about the Commanders, not that he can't play and not that he shouldn't have gotten this opportunity, but I think it's pretty fantastic that the Commanders gave him an opportunity. And we don't know, he could be landing on this roster, but at least he got the opportunity. And that's all anybody wants, is the opportunity to show what they can do. And hopefully it'll materialize into a position, if not on the Commanders roster, then he'll show enough that he can be on another roster too. But like I said, come in and be your own player, your own person and everything. But definitely, it does help to be Sean Taylor's brother, just the fact that you are his brother. And that's what that means as far as that, because they're two different people, two different players. But again, I commend the Commanders for giving him this opportunity.
100%. Couldn't have said it better myself. Ken, you got anything else?
No. We're going to go ahead and get ready to wrap up the show here. Please stay with us, even though we can talk afterwards behind the scene. Again, Donna Hopkins, thank you for joining. Reach out to her, find her out there on social media, interact with her, right? She's always putting something out there. Once you start, to Reggie's point at the beginning of this podcast, once you start hearing her voice, you'll recognize it, even if you don't see her. You'll recognize the questions she's asking and how she goes about. Pure professional, pure joy to have her on here. And until next time, peace out, knuckleheads.
All right, peace out, y'all. Donna, stick around.